Making it. I know that different people have different comfort levels, so we appreciate that. A lot of you, or the reason why you're here is because a lot of the obvious criminal activity happening in the park, and so the police have willingly agreed to come and visit with us and share information. So I'll turn it over to them and let them go at it. Introduce yourself.
I'm going to take my mask off because if not, it's going to get really hot and hard to breathe.
Can anybody hear her?
No. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. So I'm Officer Baxter. I'm the Community Affairs Officer for the Round Rock Police Department. And with me, I have Lieutenant Claypool, Sergeant Garza, and Officer Obi. I'm going to call him Obi because I can't pronounce his last name. So we're here today. This is nothing too formal. We're going to open up the forum. However, please not everybody talk at once. We are concerned just like you are, and we want to give you the opportunity to voice those concerns and get some answers from us, okay? So I think the easiest way is just to raise your hand if you have a specific question.
Can we start off with what's happening lately here? What kind of activity is happening, and what are your concerns? And then we'll share it, open it up.
Okay, all right. Lieutenant Claypool, you want to come up here? So obviously we all know about some of the incidents that have recently happened. We've had a shooting. Apparently I had some graffiti over the weekend. I don't know, well, city hasn't made it out yet to clean it up. So yeah, you've had an increase in activity over the last couple months, and we actually brought you some statistics for each individual section of your neighborhood so you can actually break down.
Can we go that way? Kind of sideways, so because we're videoing it.
Okay. So is this the camera right here?
That's the camera.
All right. Trying to make sure I can see everybody.
So that, I would, if someone wants to ask a question, I would have them say it to you and then repeat it so everybody can hear it.
Okay. All right. Well, with that said, I mentioned the shooting, the graffiti. You've had some other incidents where we actually have the stats that I sent over to Miss Dorothy to share to y'all by email. But we also brought you copies that you can take home with you if you're old school and rather look at it on paper. But does anyone have any specific questions? Yes, sir.
Is it safe to walk in our park?
What's your name, sir?
Richard Berkeley.
Richard asked, is it safe to walk in our parks? That's going to be up to your community and the police department to decide, right? Because we all have to work together. My question is, are we calling in every suspicious activity that occurs? And we do have the crime stats that shows what calls are coming in and when they're coming in and what time frame they're coming in. But let me ask you this. How many of you are in a neighborhood watch group?
Do we even have a neighborhood watch group?
What's your name?
Mason.
I'm sorry?
Mason.
Mason asked, do we even have a neighborhood watch group? So you have a home association that Miss Dorothy has taken the lead on to coordinate. However, no, you don't have an official neighborhood watch group.
Okay.
So that's a start, right? Someone should take that lead to coordinate that and get that going. You have a lot of you who live in different sections of the neighborhood. You can either break it up into smaller groups or you can make a bigger group, right? Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Can you describe to you what suspicious activity is?
And what's your name?
Robin?
Robin?
Yes.
Robin asked me to describe what suspicious activity is. A lot of us can say if it looks suspicious, it probably is, right? Only you can decide what your definition of suspicious is. It doesn't matter if something is actually happening or not. The best solution is to call the police, not try to take care of it yourself. So if you think it's suspicious, then you should call us so we can come and investigate and see what's going on. It could very well be nothing, or it could be something. So you have to determine that. I can't give you like a concrete definition of what suspicious is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it does.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it just our neighborhood that's gotten so bad, or is it all over Round Rock?
Well, Round Rock is growing, right? So that also means we're getting a lot of people coming in, a lot of traffic coming in, a lot of people coming in from other communities. You have people coming in and out all the time. But yes, we are growing and we're growing rapidly. I can't say that the whole city has an increase in criminal activity, but what I can say is that we're growing so fast, and our police department also has to grow with it in order to keep up with the calls for service we get. Robert, right?
Richard.
Richard.
The shootings that happened recently, most recently, did they happen in the daytime or was it at night?
Sergeant Garza, you responded to that call, right?
Yes,
So he asked if the recent shooting happened at night or during the day.
are we
Which one are we referring to? Both of them or just one? The most recent one?
Both would be nice.
so the most recent one that I can speak to is going to be the one that happened on Monday, this past Monday, so last Monday. So we got a call for service in reference to a disturbance and shots fired, right?
And it's not very loud.
So on Monday, can y'all hear me now? Yeah. So on Monday, last Monday, we got a call for service in reference to a shots fired with a group of a large group of males, right? A large group of males, right? Fighting in the park. So this was going to be in the proximity towards the west side of the park, over here next to Blue Bonnet Elementary. By the time officers got there, myself included, nobody was inside the park. We just had some witnesses that were walking around, some neighbors that were concerned that obviously heard the shots and came out to speak with us. We ended up finding out the disposition of everything was that there was about 10 to 15 males that supposedly were in some type of argument and fight, and somebody displayed and brandished a firearm. And when that happened, they fired 2 or 3 rounds and then ran off, fleeing in some other vehicles around the neighborhood, and they took off. We were not able to locate them. We did find some brass casings in the back of the park, and we preserved them as evidence, and we obviously processed the scene, and our major crimes came out and obviously investigated the best we could. At this point, I don't believe we have any leads in regard to that incident. As of now, that's the only one I know of. What's the second shooting that y'all are speaking of?
What time of day was that?
That was around, I believe, 3 to 4 o'clock.
There was one a week prior to that. I could check on Facebook where there was a car speeding away and
A white truck was described. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I believe I was working that day as well. As officers, we were unable to locate any type of evidence that would be indicative of somebody firing around from a vehicle. So it could have been fireworks, it could have been something completely different. It could have been a backfire, but based off when our officers went out there and investigated, they couldn't determine that a shot was fired. So I do recall that call for service.
What happened Thursday or so, where there was this Blue Bonnet Elementary is shut down because there was an active incident in the park?
Correct. So Round Rock ISD has been established in all of our elementary, middle schools, and high schools. So there is a separate department for the Round Rock school system. So they did get a call for service there. I believe it was on a Thursday, around it was 2 or 3 o'clock, in reference to a suspicious male brandishing a knife within the parking lot. They detained that individual. I have no idea exactly what they did with that male. That department works alone, and at times we do assist with mutual aid. But at that time, they took full control of that investigation. And again, I don't know the disposition of that case.
So it was a knife, not a gun.
Correct.
Gun is what I had been hearing.
Yeah, it was a knife.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, ma'am.
So I don't know half of these people in this park, and like I told you guys when I walked up here, I've lived in my house 30 years. I've been here probably one of the longest neighbors in the neighborhood, with the exception of a few. And I know Round Rock's growing, but you guys used to be so prominent in this neighborhood. You could let your kids come to the park. They could play in their front yard. You didn't have to be sitting out there with them. And now, unless we call for something, we don't see a cop car. We don't see a cop, period. And the presence of you guys, even if y'all were just passing through the neighborhood, just on a whim, going to your house or something, I think would set a big statement to as much crime as we have going on right now. Because, like I said, I've been here a long time and it's never been this bad.
Right.
You know, I mean, you have child molesters that have registered, and yes, we can go online and see where they are to keep our kids safe. But that doesn't stop what's going on publicly. Because if you're just walking, and I'm a single mom, so if I walk my little girl out here and I'm attacked, who's going to take care of my child? I mean, I have little dogs like hers. My dog's not gonna bite the attacker or something. And there's no presence. We can't call you guys and say, hey, I'm taking my dog out for the walk. Can y'all come and ride around in the neighborhood? What can we do just to get y'all to police the area more?
You want to speak to it, or I can speak to it?
You can. Go ahead. I'll speak after you.
And you can speak after. So it's going to be, this is an answer that maybe you don't want to hear, or maybe others don't want to hear. It's a collaborative effort between the Round Rock Police Department and our community, correct? It has to be, because statistically speaking, as an influx within the Round Rock and the crime rate, I can't speak to the accurate statistics because there's so many variables and everything else. Although we know that there's a huge influx, right? We have Austin, we have Killeen, we have people coming through San Antonio, we have the major tollways, we have Pflugerville that's expanding, Leander, Cedar Park. Round Rock is a main corridor, and that's why we're, as you can see, with our traffic and everything else, we're having to widen our roads and everything else. So you got to think about that stuff. So it's the totality of everything involved. So again, it's going to be a collaborative effort between us and the community, right? And if you're not seeing presence within this neighborhood or within the area that you wish to see, it's a simple call for service, right? And it's going to be a directed patrol request. Hey, I haven't seen some officers here in this area, or I'm having an issue with this intersection or a stop sign. Can I get some police presence over here? Unfortunately, with the calls for service and the amount, there's such an influx, right?
Yeah, that's what I figured.
And the
Even if you
violence
call,
as well.
there probably won't be someone
Right, and the
coming out.
violence within the city. So if you think about, if we have a shots fired on the other side of the city, that's going to take up that's going to take up 5 to 10 officers, right? I will tell you that at a time, there's possibly 15 to 22 officers on shift, okay, within the city. Do we need more? Absolutely, right? Because now it brings up concerns about, well, we're not seeing our officers. Well, 3 critical incidences within a time frame will take up all of our staffing, all of our time, and by the time we process a case like that, we have nobody left, right? So then all of a sudden, 24 hours build up to a month, and now I haven't seen an officer in my neighborhood for a month, right? So it adds up. So unfortunately, it's going to be incumbent upon the community to go over there and make that phone call, reach out to the police department, and ask them for some assistance. Exactly what we're doing right now. Unfortunately, I understand the old history of policing and the old ways of, yes, there wasn't that many neighborhoods, because I grew up in Round Rock, right? I've been here for 30 years. So I recall that. I remember seeing officers stroll around, wave their hand out the window and stuff like that. That's not realistic today. Unfortunately, we are going call to call, and it's different times, unfortunately, okay?
And that's why I think a lot of people, you said call for suspicious activity. What may be suspicious to me may not be suspicious to the next person.
Correct.
And how do you prioritize what's the most suspicious activity to get you in that neighborhood?
Right, so Round Rock Police Communications is trained as far as, they're the ones that are putting out priority calls for service, as well as supervisors like myself and lieutenant. They look at the call screen and they determine what's going to be a priority at that time, right? So if we have a shooting, if we have a reckless driver that's possibly intoxicated and they're knocking into cars, those are going to come first, because we're talking about priority of life, right? Now, we get a suspicious call for service in reference to something within the park. Maybe it's a male, looking around, pulling car handles and stuff door handles on cars. That's suspicious, correct? That may get handled at some point after, the other priority 1 call, unfortunately, right? Because we don't have the large amount of staffing like any other city would, right? We're getting there, and we hope to get more officers, but at this time, it's not realistic that we just drop everything we're doing when it comes to a person's crime and come over here and investigate it. I will tell you, as far as I know, the suspicious question came up. It's anything that's abnormal, right, within society. So it's just using reasonableness. As a person or as a human being, we know right from right and wrong, right, as when we're kids. If we see something that's abnormal, that we can believe that, hey, something's afoot, then we should probably call it in, right? So it just comes down to just using common sense, unfortunately, and reasonableness as far as what a person may be doing, right? Go ahead, sir.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
So the graffiti that's happening around the neighborhood is consistent. It's a consistent symbol. Are y'all familiar with that symbol? And is it outside of our community, or is it only contained inside this community? Yeah, is it gang related?
I'm not. Is it this right here?
No, it's the cross. It's the N8, N5. There's like 5 different.
Yeah,
instances.
I'm not aware of the symbol. I will tell you, when we come out here, we take criminal mischief call for service and take reports. That stuff gets forwarded to our intel, and our intel will go over there and cross-reference all types of criminal mischief and tagging within the city and try to determine exactly where that's coming from. If it's reference to a gang, if it's reference to some type of a legion or what have you, right? Or interest group, whatever the case may be. That's how that's handled. So at this time, I don't know what that symbol means or what it's what it symbolizes, but our intel, like I said, puts all those patterns together and they determine that. Yeah, I saw that. These are six. Thank you, sir.
Can I see that?
Hey guys, good evening. Can y'all hear me okay? My name's Lieutenant Claypool, and I oversee all the officers here in the city of Round Rock right now. I wanted to answer a few questions because y'all have asked some very direct questions of what can we do. So if you have your piece of paper, your pad, your iPad, here it is, right? If you see something, say something, right? Many times we get this, well, somebody else is going to call in. Somebody else is going to do it. My neighbor saw it, I saw it, they'll call in. It's not going to happen. It needs to be you. Second thing is the graffiti. Graffiti, once one person puts it, then the competing gangs or members that believe they're gang members, they're going to come and they're going to try to tag and say this is their area. So I'd ask y'all, as soon as you see graffiti, you need to report it. The way you're going to know it's reported to us is Round Rock Police Department comes out here and puts an orange dot every time there's graffiti. That's our symbol amongst each other, amongst the police department, to let each other know that it's already been marked. So if you don't see an orange dot, that means it hasn't been reported. Does that make sense?
Yeah, do we call emergency or non-emergency?
Non-emergency, 218-5500. 512-218-5500. So anytime you see graffiti, if it doesn't have an orange dot, that means it hasn't been reported. Although you might drive through and say, well, maybe my neighbor already reported it. No orange dot, didn't get reported. Other thing you can do, put up cameras, right? Granted, we're all working as hard as we can in this community with rising prices to live every single day. What I would ask y'all to do is invest a little bit, save a Starbucks, save going out to eat. Cameras are fairly cheap, buy yourself one. If something happens right here on this street, we're going to canvass all up and down and go knock on your door and ask you to help us. We're going to ask you for your Ring doorbell camera. We're going to ask you for the cameras that are faced inside, face the roadway. Granted, I've heard people tell me, well, Claypool, cameras only catch it after it's done. You're right. If somebody steals a sign out of your front yard, you really probably don't care as much as if somebody hits your kid out front. You darn well want to make sure you catch who did that, right? So please get cameras. We log every single house that has a camera in our system. So if we go out to a house and it has a camera, the next time we come back, we can go down the street and pull up and say if their crime occurred, then we'll know that person has a camera. Second thing you can do. Third thing you can do is please make sure you're shutting down your doors, your garage doors, right? And not picking on anybody, but the police of the community and the community are the police. That goes all the way back to Sir Robert Peel when it starts talking about policing, right? Clearly y'all can't do it by yourself and we can't do it by ourselves. So I'm gonna ask you to do is shut your garage doors down. Some of you work the night shift and if you drive through, you see garage doors open, right? If I walk down the street midnight tonight, I can guarantee you I'm gonna find some vehicle doors that are unlocked. What that does is that brings the criminal element into Round Rock. These folks that we're arresting, I hate to pick on any cities, but let's just say there's some major ones to the south of us that when we catch people and we run their driver's license, they're not Round Rock residents stealing from Round Rock residents. Most of the time, they're coming from other places, and when they're sitting in the jail cell talking to their buddy about, hey, where do I get myself a good lick at? Where's an easy target? They say, oh, come to Round Rock. They make it easy for you. They leave their doors unlocked. They leave their garage doors open. They put nice stuff outside, those kind of things. So help us help you by shutting down your garage doors, locking it, getting cameras, reporting graffiti. Y'all came here like y'all's house, probably mine as well. You got dirty dishes in the sink and laundry on the couch, probably, right? So your time is valuable. So y'all came out here to hear an answer, and I want to give you one. Second thing I'm going to ask you to do. Say, you can't hear me? You can hear me? Okay. Second thing I'm going to ask you to do is get involved, right? In our policy and procedure, we can't dive off too much into politics. What I'm going to ask you to do is get involved. For me to sit here and tell you that gun violence isn't up in the United States, I'm going to lie right to your face, and you're going to see right through it. Gun violence is up. We had this weekend, what did we have, 19 shootings this weekend that they considered mass shootings. So for me to sit here and tell you that gun violence isn't up, I'm lying to you. It is. We are pulling off more guns as police officers in America than we ever have before. So we have to ask you to get involved. What does that mean? That means get involved in the local elections. Go figure out who you're voting for, and you figure out what you want your city to look like. Right now, and I'm not saying I agree with it or disagree with it, but I'm just going to shoot the facts to you. In Austin, they're having this big issue with homeless, right? You go down there and there's a huge issue with gang members and graffiti, right? More so than the one or two spots that we find. Here in Round Rock, we have a camping ordinance, right? So y'all can drive through the city and you're not gonna find homeless people, right? Why? The police didn't make that law, we enforce it. The citizens of Round Rock are the ones that stand behind that law and say that's what we want in Round Rock. So y'all, I'm gonna come back to you. So
I'm just wondering what this has to do with what we've been talking about.
I'm getting there. So she asked, what does that have to do with this community? Because this community is a makeup of the people, right? So the people are the ones that decide what Round Rock looks like. So if they want a camping ban, then the citizens bring that forward and we enforce it, right? We also have a curfew violation, right? Again, I don't want to name cities, but let's say a major one to the south of us. Here in Round Rock, you guys say we don't want juveniles walking out, running around the streets at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. That gives the police an opportunity to stop somebody that's 15, 16 years old at 4 o'clock in the morning at the park. I can tell you I have an 18-year-old. Me and Mama never took our son to the park at 4 o'clock in the morning, right? So I'm just throwing that out there because those are the laws that the citizens of Round Rock have said that are important to them. We don't get to make the laws, we only get to enforce them. So we're going to enforce what y'all want us to do. So those, and the reason why that comes back to that is if y'all find something that's important, y'all have the right, the authority, and as citizens to go to your council and to go to your local officials and say, we want this to be a law. And then the enforcement will happen from the police side. So that's where it ties back into is the police, the community or the police. And I'm going to shoot y'all straight. There's streets in Round Rock that we don't go down every day. Not going to lie to you. It is so big that you will not see a police car the whole entire day if you were to stand here on ABC 123 Street in Round Rock. There's just too many streets. So the reason we get called and come here is when somebody calls us. So if somebody says, hey, my neighbor's garage door is open, I went over there and knocked twice and they didn't answer, you call the police instead of driving by. We'll show up out there. You're going to see 2 or 3 police cars show up. That's how you get the police in your neighborhood, by calling in. So I just want to throw a few things out there. Y'all wanted absolute reasons of what you could do. There's 5 or 6 things. And y'all want me to shoot you straight. That's why you're standing here spending your time. There's plenty of other things you could do. Yes, ma'am.
So, I am a nice, white, middle-aged, middle-class suburban lady.
Okay.
Demographically, statistically, an increased police presence means more safety for me.
Okay.
That does not hold true for all the residents of this community. So what I would like to know is if people in the community are advocating for an increased police presence, and as police are saying, as public servants, we will answer that call. What I want to know is what is being done and how is it being handled in the department to make sure that the safety that I get is also the safety that my black and brown community neighbors get. So,
I got to ask you a question, right? You said that you're a nice, white female, right?
By appearances, yes.
I don't know if you're nice or not, right? but I will say you're a white female. But say that, then I'd have to ask you for multiple reasons of why you believe that we treat other people different than you, because I can stand here right now.
Okay,
And
I'm not saying you personally
No,
or
not me.
any one of you, but statistically speaking, I am made to be a Karen. I'm
Sure.
really not a Karen.
Right.
But I'm going to get the benefit of the doubt.
So what I'm hearing you say is we want more police response, but if we get them, we have to be careful what they do when they get here. Is that right?
If I'm not saying that I want more, I'm honestly conflicted because yeah, I want to be safe. I want my kid to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
My kid also doesn't look 16 and he likes to wear his hoodies a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He could be walking down the street and someone else thinks he's a threat.
The good thing is it's not against the law to wear a hoodie in Round Rock. That's the good news.
Yes, I understand, but it's also not just y'all. We had, from what I've heard, I have not an official report, but a gentleman here in the park who was open carry, legal, but determined to make a statement that things wouldn't be tolerated. I don't know what he thinks my son looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Does he think my son's a threat?
So that's hard for me to tell you how other people feel and think. But what I can tell you is your police department is very well trained. We go through lots of training to make sure that we're not biased towards people, we're biased towards crime. And that comes directly from our chief's mouth, that we will not tolerate crime in this city, but we're not going to be biased towards people, we're biased towards crime. And that's all I can tell you. I can't tell you how somebody else feels or thinks, but I can tell you what your police department does. Yes, sir.
Can we go to her first?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. I apologize.
So, to go back to my what is suspicious
Yes, ma'am.
question.
Yes, ma'am.
would y'all consider somebody calling in because some black and brown people are playing basketball in the park?
We won't respond to that.
If somebody sees a black man jogging down the street, is that suspicious?
And doing what?
Jogging down the street.
Okay, no,
Yeah, just jogging in the neighborhood.
we won't respond to that.
Okay.
So I can tell you there's towns in America that will respond to that. Round Rock will not. So you have supervisors. I'm in the office, but Paul Garza, one of our sergeants, that won't even ever make it to an officer. We won't even respond to that. So those are some of the steps that we're taking to mitigate, I think, maybe some of y'all's concerns is if you're doing something illegal, then we have time to address it. If illegal behavior isn't afoot, then we have other things that we need to be doing. We're busting at the seams, trying to do the best we can with the staff that we have. We're not going to go and enforce non-criminal activity. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I have another quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
I knew you were talking about the homeless encampments in Austin.
Yes.
To say that we don't have encampments doesn't mean that we don't have homeless people in Round Rock or in Williamson County.
That's correct.
When y'all go out there to deal with homeless people, do you feel that homelessness is a crime?
So that's where it gets tricky, right? So my feelings, I don't drink beer, but I drink soda. So outside of work, you can ask me about my feelings if I'm not in uniform. But when I'm in uniform, I speak the truth through policy and procedures and what I have to do. That's why I was telling you, I don't make the law. So I may have a feeling about the law, but I don't get to decide on how I act on my feelings. I have to go by policy.
So what you're saying in Round Rock Police Department or in Round Rock, it is a law to criminalize homelessness.
I'm telling you, we have a no camping in Round Rock. That's 100% fact. So if somebody came today and set their camp up right here, we would tell them the citizens of Round Rock have decided they do not want that. So yes, that is a fact.
Okay, so the lady back over here.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question concerning the playground at
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a particular time that the playground is closed after 8 o'clock p.m.? I see people back there a lot late in the evening, so I'm just questioning, what is the status on that?
So, ma'am, that's a great question, and I thank you for that. So, in Round Rock, nobody asked me, but in Round Rock, Sunday through Thursday, from midnight to 6 a.m., we have a curfew. And it's extended 1 hour later till 1 a.m. on Friday and Saturday, correct, Garza? So we have a curfew. Yes, ma'am. So Sunday through Thursday, from midnight to 6 a.m., and then Friday and Saturday, we give kiddos an extra hour to be out and about. Now, what that doesn't mean that if you're 55 years old and you want to go swing out here, you can, right? Sounds good to me. What we are saying is that the citizens of Round Rock have said, we don't want a group of 15, 17-year-olds or 16-year-olds out here at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's what the citizens of Round Rock have said. So you ask what's suspicious. Suspicious is knowing the law. If you see a group of 7 or 8 cars pull up at 3 o'clock in the morning and a bunch of juveniles get out, that's when you should be making that phone call to the police because you now know it's illegal and we have a curfew violation, right? Now, that's where it goes back to your question, ma'am. We've been doing this long enough, probably 100 years between the 4 of us, that if somebody calls in and says, and I'll use your words, if somebody calls and says, hey, there's 20 black and brown people out here, I want the police, that doesn't get a police response. If you call and say, I got people violating the law out here because of curfew violation, that's where we come out. Does that make sense? We're enforcing the law, not people.
Okay, then you got
Okay.
Jeff.
Huh? So, ma'am, you're 2 for 2. So, yes, we have a law against unreasonable noise. You have a right, the citizens have said, not Joseph Claypool saying, the citizens have said you have a right to have the comfort of your own home and not be disturbed by music outside during normal hours, which is reasonable. So if somebody's out here at 1 o'clock in the morning, your words, and they're playing this loud music, call us. Call us. We're not going out there. When we get the call, we don't know if they're black, brown, white, Hispanic, male, female, young or old. We don't care. We're going out there because you're inside the comfort of your home and they're violating the law with the noise ordinance. So call us. Does that make sense? So that's 2 for 2. Ask me another one. You're doing good. Yes, sir.
Question on
Oh, I'll get you, brother.
force level. officers on the street, what is the count for the city of Round Rock? How many officers per capita of our population, and how does that compare to other cities like Georgetown, Cedar Park, and what would you consider to be an optimal number of officers on the street per 100,000 population?
Okay, so I have to be a little careful on this one, sir. So I can tell you we always need more police, right? But our chief of police and our council support us 100%, and they're doing the best they can with the monies they have. So we are absolutely below the national average on the number of police. If you take the FBI national average of how many, I think it's 2.2 cops per 1,000, that would put us at somewhere around, 260 cops roughly. We have 179, I believe. So do we have less cops than what they say? Yes. But that doesn't mean that the council and chief aren't doing their best with the restricted budget that we have.
I understand that.
Yes, sir.
And the answer is for all of us to be in contact with our council, if we want more officers per 100,000 population, we need to address it with our council members.
Yes, sir. And that's why I started off. Please get involved with your local politics, because I can tell you guys, y'all see it. You see it with your property taxes. You see it with your house. We are absolutely busting at the seam. Look at any website. It's going to say Austin Round Rock Metro, fastest growing area in the United States. We have a hard time keeping up with the police trying to get people hired to match what's coming into the city. And I'm not using that as an excuse, but we're not just going to fill a warm body in the seat. Right now we have vacancies that the city council and the chief have said you can fill that spot. But if we don't have the right person for the right job that meshes with this community and what y'all expect from your police department, we would rather go vacant than fill that seat with a warm body that's going to put us on national TV.
I agree with that.
So, I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword for us. We would like to get more bodies, but we're not going to do it at the expense of the community. If that makes sense. Yes, sir. I didn't forget about you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, sir, I can appreciate that. He's speaking from a personal standpoint of what he believes here in Round Rock, and that's what we shoot for. I mean, very often we get our news from the media, but sometimes it's great to hear it from somebody straight from their mouth. Who
Can you paraphrase what he said?
So essentially said, he goes, I grew up here. He goes, I come back to visit my brother, and he goes, I've never felt bad about coming here or scared. I've always had positive experiences with the police in the community. Absolutely. So he's saying he came from other places, Wisconsin and Mississippi, and it wasn't the same way there that is in Round Rock. So, guys, I can tell you right now, I cry, I bleed, my wife's mad at me half the time, my son doesn't listen the other half. So I got problems just like y'all do, every cop does, but I will tell you is that we're doing the absolute best we can to serve y'all in your community. Are we perfect? No. Do we make mistakes? Yes. And the first thing we'll do is get up there and admit our mistakes and tell you we did wrong and we'll do better next time, just like any human would. But we need y'all's help. So coming out today shows me that you care. The fact that y'all are asking good questions shows me that you care, and being involved is important. And I'm not going to call it anybody individually, but what I will say is on your street, let's just say you got 50 homes on your street, you got 200 people. Can you name 10 people on your street outside of your house? The answer is probably not, right? And I'm not trying to be ugly, but the answer is probably not. You can't name 10 people that live on your street other than your family members. Now, there's a few exceptions to the rules, right? What I'm trying to tell you is that it's great for us to come together one time when we're motivated, when we're upset about the crime that happened in our communities. See, it sounds like my 18-year-old. Thought he was calling me. So, but what I will say is that get out and get involved, right? Take a cold beer or soda or something over to your neighbor's house. Introduce yourself tonight, right? It's a force multiplier. We got 100 people out here. If each one of y'all do that, I'll do it. I'll call. If each one of y'all go out and meet 4 people, we've touched 400 or 500 people. Which one is it, Dorothy? Yes.
Back in the 80s and 90s, we had a lot of issues that were generated out of the Blessings area. Are we today, are we the percentage of issues that we have in this park specific, but even around the park, how much of that is actually created for people in Blessing, or is that still pretty much not a non-issue?
I can tell you, I believe it's less today than it used to be. And now, granted, I might. I'm not on the streets anymore, but just listening to the calls, listening to the names that are ran and the addresses, I believe it's less today than it used to be. And I can't tell you why, but that does. I think it's more coming in from outside other cities. And I'll give you an example. I'm over the downtown area in Round Rock. When we used to run driver's license in downtown Round Rock, it would be 123 Round Rock, Texas, 1234 Round Rock, Texas, 1234 Round Rock, Texas. All these addresses that are Round Rock. Now, when we have fights or critical incidents or people getting hurt down there, I'll just throw it out there, it's Austin, it's Killeen, it's Temple, it's Bastrop, people are flooding into Round Rock to spend their tax dollars, and this is where they're coming because they feel safe, but then crime occurs because they bring their ways with them. And I'm not talking about any of those cities, I'm just saying, when we run driver's license now, it's other folks that are coming into our city. But to answer your question, I believe it's less. So I don't think Blessing is your problem necessarily.
That I was just curious.
Yes, sir. Another question, yes, ma'am.
To the person that said that they don't see cops, I'm on Old West, I see plenty of cops.
That might be a bad thing.
Lucky you, maybe?
And I got cops for taking out the suspect, but that's it. I'll tell Johnny.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So you do live on
That'll teach me to exercise.
You live on Old West?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and some of it is, not making excuses for it, but Old West is our major cut through, right? We come off of Hester's, off of I-35. When I drove in today to get here, I came through Old West. So sometimes it's just where you tucked into the neighborhood at, depending on how many times you see the police as well. But, yes, ma'am.
I go to downtown Round Rock a lot.
Yes, ma'll
There'll be 12 cops standing outside Long Branch.
Yes, ma'am.
Standing outside Sugar Daddy's, handing out tickets for jaywalking.
I don't doubt that's it.
Is there really a need for that many handing out jaywalking tickets when they could be spread out in other places?
So to answer your question, so we have 4 designated towards downtown. I'm over the downtown unit. On a Friday and Saturday night, I'll add more down there because any given night on those nights we're usually outnumbered 200 to 300 to 1. And I can tell you I'm not the fastest, quickest, strongest, but when you're outnumbered 200, 300, 400 to 1, you want to make sure you have extra cops down there. When you talk about who decides where we go, the crime decides, right? So that's a good question, but we go where the crime is. So if you're seeing 5, 6 cops downtown on a Friday and Saturday night, that's because that's where we need to be, right? We're not somewhere else in the city because that's not where the crime is occurring. And as far as jaywalking tickets, ma'am, I think, and I hate to say it, I think we've written 2 jaywalking tickets in the last year. So now we are stopping people for it, and I can tell you the reason why that's important to me, without getting on my soapbox, DWIs are very important to Round Rock. One is we had a coach from Stony Point High School that was walking across in downtown Round Rock and got hit by somebody who was drunk, and he was walking across the crosswalk. So is it important for us downtown we have a teacher that's hit and killed by somebody that's drunk driving? Yes, that's where you're going to get your resources. We had Charles White, one of our officers, get ran over by somebody who was drinking and driving, so that's important to us. So we're going to go where the crime is. It may be good that you don't see police officers sometimes because that means the crime's not occurring, but we have to go where the crime is. Does that make sense? Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Earlier you're talking about us calling whenever we see
Yes,
suspicious
ma'am.
activity and that's our right to call.
Please.
But I've lived here for 20 some odd years.
Yes, ma'am.
Our street Yucca, several weeks ago, there was a shooting down by the bridge.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay? The individual that was shot has lived a couple houses down from us for that long. I've known that kid since he was little kid. And I know his history, and I know he's been in trouble with the law a lot. So I've exercised my right to call for
Yes.
suspicious activity going on in that home
Yes, ma'am.
for years.
Yes, ma'am.
And I suspect the reason why he got shot was to collect a debt. That's what I've heard.
I don't want to speak on that.
You can't say anything, and I understand that. But I do know from what I saw walking down the street, he also had a firearm. So, this is my problem. I have called for years and years and years based upon what I've seen, the activity going on in front of his home. Lots of cars coming and going.
Yes,
Him walking out and exchange through the window.
Yes, ma'am.
If you're following my lead.
Yes, ma'am.
I know of a lot of activity that goes on in the back of his house, through the fence, because there's a washway in between. Kids coming and going, there's an exchange, hand to hand, back in the shed. There's a lot of odd activity. Fancy cars coming and going. It's kind of like a Whataburger, you know?
Yes, ma'am.
Knock on the door, whatever. It's suspicious activity for years. And I have complained to the police. What is it going to take for something to happen here? A shooting? Well, we're sorry, ma'am. You know, we'll look into it. And now, there's been a shooting at the end of my street.
Right.
I'm concerned. Is it going to get to the point where there's going to be maybe a stray bullet? Because my daughter's bedroom faces the street. My husband's office faces the street. So I called after that shooting and I asked him, hey, I've been complaining for years about the odd activity going on. Mercedes, Jaguars, big Escalades coming and parking just for a second, hand to hand, you know, and now there's a shooting at the end of the street. Wow, how odd is that? And you know what the officer said? I don't have any record of complaints about suspicious activity at that address.
So
Now, how does that happen?
I'm not sure who you spoke with, but what I will tell you is drug crimes do occur in Round Rock, and it's kind of like fishing, right? You catch one, you catch another one, you catch another one, and so for us, thank you for calling in, right? So and I'm talking about this particular case, I'm talking about in broad stroke. So we arrest folks, they get out. We arrest folks and get out. It's the system, and our job is not to prosecute them. Our job is not to decide what bond they get or anything like that. Our job is to arrest them and let the courts deal with them. So to answer your question, I'm not talking about that specific incident. In broad stroke, we go out, we arrest folks, they get a criminal record, they get back out and do the same thing again. That's way bigger than the police. You're talking about something a lot bigger than the police can fix.
But when's it going to stop?
That's $1 million question.
But there's a shooting at the end of our street.
Yes, ma'am. And I personally am sorry that this neighborhood had to have a shooting, but I appreciate y'all calling in. There's not a single officer in Round Rock that wants any crime to occur.
Not only was there a shooting there was a murder not too long before that. So
Right.
per capita, that has to be the most dangerous corner or block in all of the city right now.
So
This
I,
is my question to
yeah,
you.
so
Excuse me for interrupting, but
no,
how
no.
is it that there was no history of
So-
me complaining?
I have to look that up. I don't know who you spoke with, but I hate to give out facts on that
No, I
specific
understand,
incident,
and
but
I'm sure there's many people that I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm sure there's many people that I've spoken with over. It's been at least 7 years, maybe more.
so I'll go on the record and tell you we do have activity at that house prior to that. So I will tell you that. So we do. So I don't want to go into the details on it, but do we have activity at the house prior to there? Yes, we do. Right. So yes, I'm sorry.
I mean, we live on Yucca, and I won't go on that corner anymore. Like,
Yeah.
because there's been a murder in September,
Mhm.
and then last month there was a shooting in literally less than a block of us.
So, and I'm not sure the best way to answer it other than 15 years ago when I'm on the streets of Round Rock patrolling in this neighborhood, we would go a year or two and not have a single murder, right? And then all of a sudden, we go 6 months or a couple years and we have one or two. It's kind of like, just like in life, when it rains, it pours. It seems like that area had a concentrated numbers of critical incidents that we would call them. I hope that it goes another 10 years and we never have one. Is it a fluke? I don't know.
But it won't
Is
be,
it-
because I drive past that corner all the time,
Mhm.
and there's gangs of people in the streets. And after that kid got shot, there were talks about like stabbed. Sorry, the kid died. There was people like fighting.
So
Shortly after that, and I mean, it doesn't go away.
So what I will say is continue to call us, because I'm trying to answer without going into details on those specific cases, but I can tell you that, well, let me speak about the guy that got arrested in Travis County, right, that just killed his stepdaughter, her boyfriend, and the other female down in Austin that they caught today. Y'all familiar with that? Now you have the hindsight bias that comes out. And basically that means now people are coming up saying, hey, that guy wasn't right. His neighbors are saying something wasn't right with him. I knew he was off. I saw him doing that, but man, I never said anything. So you have this, that once crime happens with this guy, there's a lot of people coming out of the woodwork saying, man, I knew something wasn't right with that guy. I knew he was off a little bit. For us as police, we sit there and scratch our heads saying, that's interesting. You got all these folks coming out now saying something wasn't right. But prior to that, we never heard anything about him. So what I would tell you to that is, without talking about those situations specifically, some of that incident was going on there long before that one incident happened, right? So if you see people in their driveway arguing between each other, maybe some folks are from old school saying, hey, that's between husband and wife, I'm not going to get involved. They can yell at each other, that's not my problem. But later on, when something happens at that house, it's like, man, yeah, I saw those people arguing there, but I never called in. So something as simple as a verbal argument, two people going at it, that would be a reason to call the police, right? And I'm not saying if mama's getting after their kid with a shoe because he's not acting right. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about two folks, two grown people going at it in the middle of the street or in their driveway. That's a reason to call us, because we do have prior history at some of these places that y'all are talking about where we responded, where maybe if we would have got a call prior to that, we could have taken action. And maybe we did, and then they got back out. The system's not perfect.
Also, can I ask?
Yes, ma'am.
There's the fire department, and it's an empty building out there now.
Yes,
right,
ma'am.
Where a lot of this crime seems like it's originating.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you guys thought about putting a police department in that, or like a subunit there? So.
No, it really hasn't even come up with discussions with me.
Because you say as your police grow, I mean, could that be a substation? I mean, it is a government-owned building already, as it was city-owned.
That's absolutely a good idea. Now, without going on public record, that's something that the citizens could maybe recommend. But as a police officer, we have our main building, but I can't tell you about the logistics of separating us and all those pieces. But you know why they moved, right? You know they just moved down the road?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I know where they moved to,
So,
and I know why they moved, but I'm just saying, like, it's an empty building, which again can have more crime because now it's an empty building.
Right.
And also, we're having an issue with crime and gangs, having a police substation in the neighborhood.
It's probably not a bad idea. What I can do is have our officers go there and type reports and sit there, because 10 minutes of criminal activity, you got an hour report. So they can go there and sit and type their reports as an option, but I don't know what the city's going to do with that property. But I will tell y'all is that your city is safe. This neighborhood is safe. Again, it's unfortunate that y'all have had a few critical incidents. We call them critical incidents, stabbings or shootings. Nobody wants that, not the police and not you guys. We'll do more as far as patrolling, but the way to get us out here is to call suspicious activity. Yes, Dorothy.
Okay, now I'm hearing that she had multiple events where she's called and called and called, and the record's been all called again. Is there a way to get one person from the police department be the person to call if there's incidents in that area?
That's a good question, because I was told several years ago, here's a main line you can call for this address. I said, great. So I've been trying to call that line again. I get no answer. Again, and I can tell you, since that incident, since that shooting, I believe that guy is out of the hospital now. Business is back to business. Cars are coming. There's handouts.
So, to answer your question,
what am I supposed to
the
do?
218.
Call you every day, but I'm seeing cars come. Because, I mean, it's like they're
So-
going to start knowing my name. Oh, it's this bowling calling.
So we're not gonna. We have to respond for criminal activity, right? So that's where we have to be.
That criminal activity.
It depends, right? So we have to be careful, right? Because now you get to this crossroad of you have this email over here that says you're just calling because of this, and you're saying, well, I'm just going to call because I see that. We have to be careful that we respond for criminal activity, right? We can't come out because it's a certain person or a certain race or anything like that. We have to respond for crime. Right. No, I'm just, that is absolutely a reason to call us. That's suspicious.
But you're also saying if something else across town is more precedent, you're going to take those calls before her call.
100%.
And so she can call 1,000 times and it still may not do any good.
So the example,
I get you guys are limited, but I totally get what she's got, because I got somebody in my neighborhood that we don't trust, but
so
you know, it is what it is.
What I use as an example is, do we have anybody in the medical field? Because first I'll tell you thank you. Anybody in the medical field? Perfect, thank you all. So I always tell people we're kind of like a triage nurse, right? You walk in because your finger's broken and you're in the emergency room and you've been there for 4 hours waiting, and then somebody walks in with a gunshot wound. You just went to the back of the line, right? So you may ask yourself, hey, I was here first. This person has a higher priority injury, right? And y'all get that. So same thing with the police. You may be up next to get a response from the police. A more higher priority critical call comes in, and you get pushed all the way to the back. It doesn't feel good, doesn't taste good. Sometimes you don't understand it, but that's how the police work, just like a triage and a nurse, an emergency room. Yes, ma'am.
Real quick, can you tell us what the legal limitations are, if any, about carrying firearms in the park, especially given proximity to the elementary school?
So, Officer Garza, do you want to answer this one as far as firearms? So, it is absolutely right. Now we go back to not Joseph's feelings, but if somebody wants to open carry, they have a right to. And because walking up here, somebody said, hey, there was two people arguing or discussing of, hey, I'm going to have a firearm, and this person doesn't think they should. That's way above the police, but you are absolutely allowed to have a firearm on your person.
In the park?
In the park is not a problem.
Is there a proximity to the elementary school?
As long as it's done legally. So, say it again.
Is there a proximity to the elementary school, or simply not on school grounds?
You can't bring it on school grounds. Correct. So
I've got a question to kind of follow up to hers. So if you get multiple calls that other things take priority, right? Like let's say we keep calling an address A for suspicious activity, but you keep getting calls elsewhere. Do you guys keep records like, hey, we got 25 calls in this area in the last month, but nobody was able to respond?
So we always respond.
Or in a timely manner, right? That if you continue to get calls and look at those metrics to say, hey, we keep getting calls, maybe there's something we should look at here, because every time we go, we got nothing. Or maybe parking somebody down the street for a little bit, doing paperwork or something, and keeping an eye out, but noticing that you keep getting calls in certain areas that continues to get calls, and nothing really comes out of it. Now, I don't know if anybody does or not, if anything happens, but I'm just curious if there's metrics you guys are able to say, hey, we see something, how do we handle this?
So every single call is logged, right? So every single time we go to a house, it's logged. Right. Every single one of them. It's not a perfect solution, but
so going to a house.
To use your example, right? You see this hand-to-hand transaction. Well, by the time you see it, that person is driving off, right? So,
and like you're saying, I may not be able to get there in time. It's like a triage nurse. I understand it. So activity's over. They're
right.
gonna be like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. So to you, it probably looks like it's not that big of a deal. So I'm sorry to interrupt. So I understand what you're saying.
Right.
I work in medical too.
So by the time we show up, we may not see what you saw, and that person's already gone. So it really is complicated at that point.
So then what you're saying is, are you keeping a log of how many times I'm calling and then saying, something kind of weird here, even though I didn't see anything when I got there, there's a big history of how many times these people are calling.
We absolutely do.
Maybe there is something to this.
We absolutely do.
We should start watching.
We absolutely do. And in this neighborhood, what's important to y'all is this neighborhood, rightfully so, because you live here, right? Next week, we're going to have a meeting on the other side of town, and what's important to them is that neighborhood to them, right? So everybody has their concerns, and it's important, not minimizing any of them, but you guys truly, not to be ugly, you really don't care too much about what's happening in Forest Creek. You just don't, right? Just like they probably don't have as much care about what's going on here. So everybody is particular to their own problems, and so yes, we keep track of it all. But we go where the crime is.
Right. But, I mean, with all due respect, if you guys did see, like, oh man, there's
The answer is yes on that. We do.
Kids are gonna know, and I can tell you, the guy's gonna say, hey, don't start coming around because there's a brown unmarked car right up the street. They're gonna know you're sitting there watching.
So I'm going to use your example. She said that if the police are around, then she's going to say, your words, homies don't come around because I can tell you the same thing as far as if parents are active out and about, these criminals, they don't want to be seen, right? So if y'all give your part to the homies, right, your words, it's better that we come out here with our dog and our kid and we enjoy this park, because those folks, they do not want to do criminal activity when the good people are out here, right? A lot of those crimes are happening.
This guy, he knows that I'm watching him all the time.
Yeah. So it sounds like your situation might be a little bit different, but I'm speaking for the masses. So I'll take one more question. Yes, Dorothy.
I'm sorry. Neighborhood Watch was mentioned. We don't have one currently. Is there anybody here interested in setting up a neighborhood watch?
She's talking to me about that right now.
Okay, good.
I've got her card. I'm gonna get with her, and then I'll get with you.
Okay, we'll put him in charge. What's your name?
Mason. Mason.
Nathan. Mason's in charge of Neighborhood Watch. If anybody's interested, get with him.
So what I will tell you is, I think me and Dorothy, when I was the community affairs officer, me and Dorothy were talking 10 or 12 years ago about Neighborhood Watch. And what you find is that today, people are motivated and upset, and they want something done, and then when we leave, we go back and everybody goes back to doing their whole daily activities. It has to be continued, right? And all of you have jobs where 10% of the people do 90% of the work. You can shake your hand and say, yes, there's 10% doing 90% of the work, or there's somebody else carrying somebody else's load. Me and Dorothy, we tried 10 or 12 years ago to do a neighborhood watch. It's going to take everybody's effort to go out there and get involved, not just tonight, but tomorrow and next week and next month and a year from now. So y'all's neighborhood absolutely is safe. I thank y'all for coming out today. Appreciate you being involved. We're going to stick around. Me, OB, Sergeant Garza, and Baxter. We'll stick around. If you didn't want to ask a question in public, we're going to stick around for a moment. Thank y'all.
Officer, I want to ask you something real quick. Can you repeat that number because I didn't take notes?